We're live! Hello. Welcome everybody to this artist talk following the opening of this year's festival exhibition 2022, in which we present a new work, Fra Far by Lene Berg. This talk is almost a tradition already, like it gives us the possibility to dig into some topics and to see some of the people who came to see the show again. I'm very happy to see many people, and although I'm a bit sorry that it's so cramped, but I hope you have enough space. Yeah, we're very happy to have Lene Berg with us, and that we have been able to produce this amazing exhibition with her, which we have been proud to share. And Lene Berg is a film director and visual artist based in Berlin and Oslo. She studied film at Dramatiska Institutet in Stockholm and has directed 4 feature-long films, in addition to a larger number of video works, short films and exhibitions. And I want to mention one recent exhibition at Haus der Kulturen der Welt in 2017, Parapolitics, Cultural Freedom and the Cold War, in which Lene contributed a work because it points to some of the topics that she's dealing with, the Cold War, subjectivity, surveillance, liberation. And they're all kind of, what these topics connect is that they share an interest in how we as people with subjectivity and a private sphere or life inhabit this history and how we relate to it, adjust to it or change it. Berg's latest production, the autobiographical film False Belief, premiered at the Berlin International Filmfestival in 2019 and was nominated there for the Amnesty and the Teddy Awards. Another larger film project she made, the film Kopfkino, was produced for her solo exhibition at Hene Onstad Kunstcenter in 2012 and was nominated for the Amanda Award and as Best Nordic Documentary at Copenhagen Docs. She won the Log Skive Award at Trondheim Kunstmuseum in 2013, and also in 2013 she represented Norway at the Venezia Biennale with the film Dirty Young Loose, Ung Løs Gris, which was shown together with a series of Edvard Munch prints in a very beautiful and also interesting combination. Before we start with the conversation, I wanted to mention that we have a few more events coming up, some of them this week. Tomorrow on Sunday, we start with our tours program through the exhibition. Every Sunday we have tours at 1 o'clock, a family tour with a drawing workshop taking place here upstairs, and at 2 o'clock a tour through the exhibition with our mediation team. Then also tomorrow at 3 o'clock we have an event that's part of Damla Kilikiran's exhibition, Twine an Image That Is Yet To Be, downstairs in Gallery 5, a performance by Finn Adrian Jorkjan. And then more events that relate to Lene's exhibition. Next Saturday, another platform talk, also here in this space, on memory and storytelling with Merete Røstad and Elliot Moleba. And then also 2 screenings that we host together with Cinemateket in their beautiful cinema space. On Tuesday, 7th of June at 6 o'clock, Kopfkino, the aforementioned long-form film from 2012. And on 21st of June, a short film program with some very rare films that Lene has put together and that all in some ways show interest that other filmmakers share with Lene. There's more program that's all available and researchable in our program booklet and on our website. I have a few technical remarks. The event today is live streamed. We have cameras here. There are some areas which are out of the camera. Yeah, please be aware or move out of the camera zone if you are uncomfortable with being filmed. And we will talk around 40 minutes and have afterwards a possibility also for questions from the audience. Yeah, we'll come to that. And then thank you a lot for making this event today happen, to the live team, to my colleagues Henrik and Nora. And yeah, welcome again to everybody here. Are you comfortable?
I'm fine. Henrik, does it work? Okay.
Seems good.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I mentioned, you have a background in film, and I think it's visible in the exhibition. It's an interesting relationship between moving image and spatial installation, but it's also, I guess, what we can see and what will be interesting to talk about. There's maybe a different focus in the exhibition on narration, for example, that I think shows a connection to filmmaking. But maybe most of all, if we speak about film in your case, it has been often classified as documentary, but you also often respond then to this classification that you're actually not a documentary filmmaker. I mean, you're an artist in a broader sense, but also if you work filmically, you work with different notions. Yeah, you mentioned, for example, that documentary is just another form of fiction. Can you elaborate on this distinction?
This is like a language labyrinth when you start to talk about it, because the words are not precise. But I think documentary is not a precise word, but it is a genre within filmmaking that is based on images of people who are not acting, basically, or not supposed to be actors. I think, but the big difference between what we now often refer to as fiction, which I would say staged film, is that the production, the method of the production is very different. So for me, the reason I started to do work with so-called documentary or footage or films was partly because I couldn't fund my feature films. And also, I needed to get out of the kind of cultural work bubble that I lived in. So the first project I did like that was I followed a Swedish boxing team for a year. And this was for me like to not be in the same crowd that I was always with. So that was one reason. On the other hand, I think that if one uses instead the word facts, let's say facts is like one part of understanding things. And sometimes a picture, let's say, of this room now, it's a factual image. We are here, and if we take a photograph, it will be the truth if you if you only look at this photograph as a proof of us being here. But if it's used, and all images are read in many different contexts, it doesn't prove anything apart from that. So that's why I think the documentary is kind of a treacherous term, because it has led us as collectively into thinking that if someone is not an actor, he or she is truthful or authentic. And this is one of the notions that I think is a problem. But also language is like, as I said, if I continue now, it will be completely blurred. But it's actually very clear when I work.
Yeah, but it's interesting that you, even when you make films that are based on existing footage, you are very conscious about the way in which you construct a narrative. And maybe that's interesting because it points to the fact that we are so used to narratives and we use them all the time. So even if we tell a story, we might actually tell the story in the way of maybe a melodrama or a biopic, etc.
Yeah, I think this is very interesting. It's not something I'm an expert on, but I've tried to, in this exhibition, to use different ways of both narration as the voice, narrating something, but also how to structure stories. For instance, in the one movie or film that's called Prison Letters, it's a loop, and it's built more as a song than a film. So it's like a verse and a chorus or a refrain. And this structure I've used it a little bit before, but this was much more complicated than I thought. So Alan Edenholm, who edited with me, we really had to do a lot of different tests, and it looks completely simple when you see it, but it was actually more complicated because it has to do with how we perceive repetition. what does it mean that the same image comes again? Does it mean that the film is over, is the beginning again, or does it mean that you can read it in a different way? The one work we couldn't include now, which is called Stories about Annet, it's now available only online because we had a bit too much in the exhibition. That's only voices telling stories about Annet, my father. And this is also structured in a way with verse and refrain, or verse and chorus. And that was also complicated in a different way because people read voices differently than they read images. Yeah.
Maybe we need to go a bit into the topic of the exhibition, or what the exhibition actually deals with. I wanted to start though with a kind of first question about your way of working, and not necessarily about the topic, because this is your exhibition, and even though it deals a lot with your father and with, as we will discuss in a second, but you are actually, it's your framing and it's your working through it that's important for the exhibition as a topic and what it does. So as we mentioned already a bit, it's an autobiographic project, but that's in a way another trap, that word, because there's another notion you mentioned in conversations before, which is that the exhibition is actually based on a lot of research. So even though it's autobiographical, there is you had to dig in a lot of material in the working process. And this is also something I encountered sometimes. If a project is considered biographical or autobiographical, one assumes that the material is already there. And maybe I start with a direct question. In this case, how did you start with the project?
Yeah, I think it was. I started basically just with the memory that is the beginning of this exhibition in the first room, where I reconstruct a memory of how my father was arrested with his dead wife, or found with his dead wife in a car in Paris, and arrested. This was kind of the first thing. I just wanted to research actually if that memory was true, because I realized actually I couldn't know all those details, or I have the very cinematic picture of it. And then when I started that, I started to, it was actually impossible to find the facts to begin with. So then I started to open all kinds of other boxes and collect things from my family, and even from psychiatric institutions, and my father's diaries, and published text and unpublished text. I have a sister who's a perfect archivist and has made like everything available, basically, that was left after my father. And I think that when I did that, it was locked down, and I thought, okay, this is a good time to do it. I have no idea if this is going to be interesting in an artistic way, but I would like to just look at it and see if something happens. And when I did that, I thought, okay, I have done a lot of projects with research. In a sense, for me, it's research is also about conquering the world, about not being like limited to the world that you're given. But in this case, I thought I would use the same method on my own history and my family as I've done with other people in other works. And at some point, I thought maybe it's kind of, in Swedish you would say "det var dags," or it was time for that. Like after going through this many times, this process. Yeah, I think that's one way of saying how it started. Because I could start from another direction also.
Another angle would be like, so the story digs into this very dramatic childhood memory of yours, your father being arrested for the murder of your stepmother, his second wife, in Paris, 1970. Third wife. Oh, yeah, 1975, and reconstruction there, and gathers material about your father from this entry point, you could say. It's a kind of it's an obviously dramatic, but also very ambivalent. It's creates a difficult relationship between you and your father, and not just for you, for the whole family. But what was then your interest to follow into that story, to turn it into a research project, and in the end, the starting point for an exhibition?
I think first it was this my interest in these different stories. So a book that I've been very inspired by is Raymond Queneau's Exercices de style, exercises of style. I don't know what it's called actually, in stiløvelser in Norwegian, where he is basically writing the same. It's not even a story; it's just a scene in a bus. And I think his 99 versions of that particular scene is written as a newspaper article, as a Dada poem, as a bureaucratic paper, but that way of approaching the same. So I think it's a kind of the best example I have of how genre is also content. It's completely, so this same scene turns out to be completely different stories in terms of, because of the style it's told. It's about different things depending on the style. I hope I said that well. Anyway, so that was actually, so I thought, and this may still happen, that scene, the reconstructed memory, I have now found maybe 5 or 6 other versions of the same episode, and then none of them are totally the same. And also it's very much depending on, like a newspaper article will also color how you read the facts. Or if it's an actor performing, he will color it, or he or she. If it's a so I think that was my starting point. But then I realized that the exhibition format, as we started to talk, and this was going to become a festival exhibition. For a while I thought maybe each room should just have a different version of the same event. But then when I started this research, I thought it was much more interesting to have each room approach the topics or the theme in different ways, so that I could rather use these genres or enlarge the theme or the material or the essence even. How can I approach someone who has been dead for almost 40 years, who I knew very well, but still almost have forgotten, and how can I kind of find him again? So it's a little bit about, really, we have ghosts, several ghosts in the exhibition. It's also about chasing the past, and who was he, and how was he, and what did he smell like, and stuff like that. Yeah.
There's this other notion that's hanging in the air. It's like memory, and which again, like one misunderstanding of memory is that it's the truth, or that it's something that comes from the past, basically. That has been. It's like a box that is delivered from the past, and then I guess like it's probably also in our own experience better to. Yeah, it is something that we actually create in the present, even if it's about the past. There's like theoretical approaches, like Benjamin as a famous Walter Benjamin as a famous writer who thought a lot about remembrance as an active act, actually, like actualization of a situation that happened in the past. So that's memory. We produce it now.
I think that absolutely. Memories are both fact and fiction, which is also why I'm interested in it. Because if I had the memory for 40 years, it's in a sense a fact. Even if that wasn't what happened, it's a fact in my kind of history, my building of my identity or my origin. But I also think that it's about the power to, or when we think back and find specific memories, and that they actually change with time. If you have that possibility to look at the same memory several times during your life, it will be very different. Just like reading a book again 30 years later, the book is not the same anymore. And I think that there's also this dialogue in doing this with my father, that I felt that he, as a person, had locked his narrative and his memory, and that was also kind of something that I also want to open up, like to read him differently than he read himself, you could say, or how psychology read him, because he was also had to be, or was what do you say, committed to psychiatric ward several times, and I feel that they also locked him into a specific narrative and a specific memory of how things went.
But maybe to understand actually the working process, like what did it do to you, or how did it enter the work that you had to go through this material and actually find a relationship to this to the father who was dead and who did things, good things, bad things, and unspeakable things?
You mean how I?
How did you cope with it or deal with it during the process?
A lot of wine and some tears. Actually, I could have a lot of tears also, and conversations with people close to me, and who also could stand the tears without being scared of this. And now they come back. It was different from doing research into something that I didn't know before. But also, I think maybe the fact that there was this lockdown situation, it's also was nice to have strong feelings, because I think it was a lot of screens, a lot of phone calls, for me at least the first months in Berlin alone, and so somehow there was also a connection to life in this work.
No, but that's just occurring to me also in this situation. Like, I mean, there is this this very emotional level of the project as a whole, and I think that's also something that we notice now in reading reviews about the exhibition, the way that it's perceived. There's this level of emotions and effect on people, but then there is also like an intellectual rigor in the process, and that's part of your working methodology, how you worked through the material and gave a shape. The exhibition on the formal level looks probably playful, and it offers many kind of various artistic forms of expression, for example. It tests different ways of telling a story, but it is also very rigorous. That's for me important to keep in mind. It's and it's interesting that these two elements seem also to have a balance or have a relationship, and maybe the rigor is also set in motion by emotions, while also the emotions are kept in are given form by the rigor.
I've always thought that we have this. Not only me, a lot of people say this, but it's hard to get by the what do you call it? The like dual dioptic. No, what do you call it? Like when it's just two. You have good and evil, and you have emotion and intellect. This kind of very because I think you can't really have intellect like a good intellectual thought without emotions. I actually think that they are dependent on each other. And I think in this process, what made it possible to go into this material was one, that I had a method. Totally, I think the method was, because that is also, I think it's like if you have an instrument or something, you know how to rehearse even if you're depressed or whatever. You do the things you need to do in order for it to be materialized. That is one thing. But then also, of course, I knew I couldn't do it like Stalin by Picasso, another film I also made. I enjoyed being alone in the studio. This time I knew I couldn't be alone in my studio. So I had to have Ida, Alan, Richard in Berlin, to actually also discuss it and keep it formal also. Because I don't think I cried many times together with them. I cried when they left. No, I didn't. But it's like, there are like two parts of the process, basically. Like I feel that we didn't work with emotion, like how can we make people cry? It's not at all the question. It was much more like how can we... for instance, when we edited the one in the telephone downstairs, if I couldn't have done it on my own, someone else had to edit it, and I could listen to it, and then I could say, we need some more pauses, or I need to redo it, or whatever. So this is, I think, this collaborative part of the project was essential, like really.
Maybe just to since we're speaking about collaboration, the topic is it's really a family story. Also, it has this question of like how you approach the material, but it doesn't affect only you. It's also affecting actually all other members of your family. I think many of them are here, but you also work with some members of your family on the project.
And this was, I'm kind of a bit stunned that it worked out that way, because I didn't think it from the beginning that this should be a family project and we should all come together and be a big family. But it was actually kind of the project itself had this in it. In general, it has been attracting a lot of good people, I have to say that. But also I asked my sister, who is Venezia Biennalen, she's probably here somewhere. She is educated billedkunstner. I actually don't know the English word for this. And she has also worked as a graphic designer for many years, but now she retired exactly in January when I was to make the film Ghosts downstairs. So she agreed to do them with me and to produce them with me, and in a way, so we got copies of some of my father's feature films, copies that are no longer possible to screen. I promise to say that every time, because the National Library was generous to give them to us. And then we had a moment where we thought, is this what we want to do? Two daughters cutting up our father's feature films. There's like a lot of symbolic levels on this, but which wasn't what I intended to begin with. And I think the creatures or the ghosts themselves are something else now, but that was what we did. The other part was that I wanted, my brother is reading my father's, the letters my father wrote to us when he was in prison. And when we did it the first time, this was very, yeah, I think I will get through it. We had exactly these moments a couple of times together. And at that point, I just wanted him to share it with me. And this was a way that he read it loud, made it possible to kind of share it instead of just saying, do you remember he was in prison and blah, blah, blah. And then also his kids were present when he did this. So, and my brother is now older than my father ever was, or when he's, and then he had his kids there. So I felt that my brother was both the son and the father, and there was all these levels coming together. And we tried actually to redo them or re-record them. Me and Marius alone in my mother's house. Everything was like controlled. There was no one to disturb us. This should be perfect condition. And they are not as interesting as the ones we did with the kids present and with the dogs fighting around and everything. So that was also kind of a very special moment. And then I asked my brother to, because most of the drawings in this white room downstairs are drawings my brother made for my father in prison. And first time I saw them, I just was struck by the energy and the, I don't know, need to communicate with someone in prison when you can't write still. He hadn't started school yet when my father was in prison. So I asked Marius if I could use them. And he said, yes, of course, you can use whatever you want. And then like 5 months later, he said, those drawings, you can use them, that's okay, but they're really ugly. I don't know if you still think they're ugly, Marius. We have to talk about that. But anyway, yes. And then I don't know, I just, blah, blah, yeah.
No, you mentioned also, I mean, your two sisters were part in some way, but also actually your mother helped with doing some embroidery.
Yeah, my mother has been very strict in the sense that she doesn't want to know anything. It's all mine. You can take whatever you want, and I don't want to have an opinion. And when she went into the exhibition, she said, don't ask me afterwards. I will not say anything. But she will sooner or later say something. But the thing is that the embroidery part comes from different sources. But my mother is very good with handcraft, all kinds of knitting, and she's before she studied sociology, she was a seamstress, and so I have this whole kind of textile craft from her, and also from my sister. So when this will be too tedious to describe the whole process of this. I felt that this was something I have fra mor. So I have a lot from Fra. I also have other things than embroidery from my mother. I have to say that, but it is there is let's say, a feminine, or things that are associated with women and femininity that came through with the textiles.
Yeah, no, that's a good point to come to this. I mean, to the topic, which is, if you speak about the father, of course, it's about this your own the story, the autobiographical part, but there's also the father in a kind of extended sense, like what it represents, and how in a kind of this binary logic of genders that we still live in, and that comes with a lot of meaning, that you also touch in some ways, even with the title. If you say Fra Far, it's like opening this or touching on this binary logic of genders, and that's still kind of so incorporated in the world, and it's organized, and we are working in many ways against that, but it's also something that actually sits in all of us still in some way. And so the father as a figure, but also you spoke in some ways, some moments, things you say about your father, or problems that are interested in your father. They also, it's actually not just your father that's
I think
father's problems.
Yeah. So this morning when I read the review in Klassekampen, I recommend it to everyone. No, I don't. But I thought that I am as ambivalent to humankind and myself as I am to my father. So I think the reason for using him as material was one, that I think he would be pleased if I could use him for my purpose. And the other thing is that I think there is in my father's life and destiny and experience, there is something deeply human. Of course, all humans are deeply human, but he's almost an exaggerated image of certain dilemmas and certain masculine, I think, dilemmas. Absolutely, I'm happy that people can see it, even if it's not totally like outspoken in the exhibition. I think that I mean, in order for something to be artistically interesting, it has to point outside of me, you know, working with my brother, which is nice, but it's like has to be something more. And I thought when we first discussed this way of structuring the exhibition that I wanted it to be unresolved from the exhibition, so that when you leave the exhibition you will still not really know what happened, that is not the essence, the facts are not the essence. There's something else that we try to evoke. So even now I can't really put words on it, but I think that's kind of, and that's why we have also avoided to do too much facts, to use too much facts. There was only like factual things as newspaper facts, which are also very relatively facts, I can tell you that, from those newspaper articles. But yeah, I think that was this answer, or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, we can maybe let's go into the exhibition in a kind of as a material, because it is kind of structurally constructed. It's 5 rooms, and each room has its own atmosphere. Is kind of they all have various layers that they use, like different colors, different surfaces, different smells we even have, and then these narrative elements, films, audio works, objects that might remind us of something or tell us a story. And this, of course, this has, we spoke a bit about memory, and this has also to do with memory, or memory systems, the way in which we remember things, and also tools that we use consciously or unconsciously to memorize things. This is kind of like systems or methods we have to remember things, and one way is to remember a talk, for example, as a house, and each object has a function in the talk we are supposed to give or the story that we have to want to remember. And this is also something that you used very consciously as a way to construct the stories.
Yeah, at least I thought about this, that a building can be, in a sense, a story, or that each room is a chapter in a story, if you think of it that way. And that I'm hoping that someone who has visited the exhibition could think back and actually retrace the green room and the red room and the gray room and the one with the beanbags, and that there are like certain things that characterize, or the very white light. And also because I think that theory of memory, that the reason scandals work is because they are different from ordinary things. But if the same scandal, if it's the same scandal all the time almost, you, like at my age, you're not really, just because it's like, oh, dead woman, it's not going to attract interest because it's told in the same way. And I already read that article before about someone else. I'm maybe exaggerating a little bit, but so I think that in order to encourage an audience to create their own memories, it needs to be different from how you usually tell this story. Let's say, woman found dead in a car. And that has to do with the memory system also, because if you create a building in your mind, like a totally fictional building, it has to be something in each room that refers to something very particular for you, and it has to be different from the other rooms. Otherwise, it will all blur.
But are there? I mean, looking at the exhibition and the 5 stories, are you able to do they have topics?
Yeah, in a way, I don't think they are part of a bigger story. They are like. But one will have to work a little bit to piece them together. But I think definitely that they are there's one room, the gray room. It's a room with portraits, but it's also like with a room with very different kinds of portraits. And I've been interested in that before, in like Stalin by Picasso. Like, what is a portrait? What is the kind of image of someone say about the person or the person who made it? In this case, I avoided almost any photographic images of my father, not because there are none, there are many, and many of them are very good, but I thought I would like to see how people, or how he will appear if you don't actually see his photographic image. So there is an image of his hand in one film, and I comment on that. And then the actors, which is I like a lot, the 4 actors who are basically coming to a casting agent to audition for playing my father in a feature film that I've written. They've been given very limited material, but a part of a text that I've written, a monologue, and they just talk about how they read him from that little material. And I just thought the way they reason and they try to put words on it, but also like suddenly they start to say, "Jeg vil dø på en torsdag," "I want to die on a Thursday." And they say it in 4 different ways, and that moment was like, I thought, wow, this is interesting in itself. Maybe we could make a film of that. And Alan found this particular way of doing it, which I think is great. And I'm actually also very grateful to the actors for this generous of them to let us use this, because they didn't do it they didn't rehearse or anything. It's just a raw material for me to see, to try to figure out who could play Arnold. So this was only one room. Should I tell the other rooms? I'm sorry.
Yeah, maybe, I mean, maybe say something about the white room in contrast, because the gray room, the room on this side of the space, is in a way, you say that it's a portrait. It's also in a way maybe the most official picture, because it's other people reimagining your father, and it's a picture also like Hendene, a film about a film that he made, where his hands appear, and then you start a kind of very beautiful text remembering your father. But this is basically something that is maybe the most external picture from your father. And then the white room, it's moving in a different direction because
yeah. So basically, I thought that from this green room to the right, it's about the time he lived in and the analog medium film used to be, and the broadcasting also, and some sort of time machine objects like a radio and the film boxes, and also some of the textiles there. But to the left, I tried. Like a journalistic question would be, how is it to be 9 years old and your father is arrested for murdering your stepfather? That room, the white room, I don't know how that was anymore. It's such a long time ago. And I really don't remember that time. Now I do, because I try to really, really remember it through those documents and objects. So I think that, for instance, when I started to do research, I remembered very well that we wrote to my father in prison and made drawings, but I didn't remember if he ever answered. I even wrote the text where I said to him, I wrote different letters to him through the process, and one of them was like, did you ever even read our letters or comment on them or something? And then I opened these boxes and it's like piles of letters from him. I mean, it's like he wrote a lot, and almost all of them are so beautifully done and so carefully, and he's really trying to be a father in these conditions very strongly. And then the other thing I found was all the letters we sent to him that he had kept in a very special folder. So through these documents, I'm trying to actually remember how it was, to not know when he was coming back, to not know anything, and trying to keep in touch with him. But I think there's also something else going on in that room, and I wouldn't even try to picture it. But and then the black dark room behind the white room is meant to be a room for a little bit like calmer room, and I have tried to reconstruct the questions I had about my father's crime, and also about how he was doing in prison. I'm this. Just like I'm now, I'm both like, as I remember it, I was both like very worried about him, but also didn't want him as a father anymore. So it's like this, this ambivalence is the same I have with humankind. I want it to be good, but I'm also like, really, the climate, Ukraine. I mean, like, it can be. Do you have to love people? It's very hard to do sometimes.
Yeah. Just to conclude about this topic of memory, because I think it is, I said in some ways, almost an essayistic exhibition that about memory, about things that we remember and how we remember things, but also how memory is represented in the exhibition spaces. But then there's also, that you touched on this now, the socio-political dimension, and you talk about it also just before a little bit, the question of gender-based power dynamics, for example, this narrative of the male suffering genius that your father in a way really impersonates, and which has a lot to do still with the way we live today.
I think that that is something that I'm aware of, and I think that for me the male genius is a work that I was never able to realize for the exhibition. But I think that these were also ghosts in my childhood. You know, Rilke, Orson Welles. I get this. These are these big figures that no one can ever live up to. That's how I perceived them as a child. And there's nothing wrong with them. It's just this myth of, or Edvard Munch also was like, or Van Gogh or whatever. This suffering, and it's not that I think that one shouldn't suffer, but I think that for as I perceived my father's destructive forces, they were also very much related to an ideal of how a man of his kind of talent and possibilities should be. And I think, for instance, I sometimes think that the whole queer discussion that is going on now, we were so interested in talking to him about those questions, because the time has changed so much in terms of those, how to perceive, a father even, so the way, but also as a film director is really one of the most macho images you can have somehow. And I think he tried to do it in his way, but I don't think he had really the right climate around him to really bloom, let's say. Did I answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, in a way, yeah. And because it's about people, but it's also about context, and which is something that appears in the exhibition. We spoke in advance of the exhibition, or a long time ago, as also one of the interests, this kind of the world that passed the old Norway in old times, pre-oil, but also the celebration of masculinity that this kind of incorporates, and all the attributes like a way of heavy smoking, and even the analog film that's hanging in the room. This kind of materiality, and
I'm not sure if was it a question.
Almost, I'm pointing towards.
Okay. But I can say one thing that I remember from very early on when we discussed it, speaking about how to do the space and in terms of story, that the first thing you said when I said that, you said we have to make the big space into two spaces, then you said, because if the bigger space in the Kunst, I don't know, many of you may know the original layout of the Kunsthal, that otherwise there will be like one chapter is much more important than the other. So we really tried also to make them equal somehow, which I think is interesting. That I don't sense it now that it is a room that is divided. You can see it because there are a couple of things you can see it on, but basically they really work as two separate spaces. I felt like saying that mal apropos, but yeah.
No, but is this notion of like Norway, or the kind of specific context of Norway, still important in the exhibition?
I think it is, but I think it depends so much on who is watching, and this is both generational and national, I almost said. I think that, for instance, the people of my age and older, they will have a relationship to that kind of telephone and that kind of radio, and even the film boxes maybe. Whereas Didrik and Fritjof, my nephews, I don't know, I look forward to talk to them what they actually, how they perceive these things that they don't have a personal memory of. So, but I hope there is a feeling of just this collage that Alan and I made with small pieces of børsnoteringen og fiskerinytt og gjengangere that is standing in the corner that is not supposed to stand there listening to it, but this is like for me, when I hear those sounds and the ding, 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 klokken nå, korrekt tid or something, I don't remember. But when I hear it, I'm almost back in the 70s I grew up in. And then many other memories also come back. So it's not only about then the radio. I will see the apartment we lived in, or the neighbor's dog or something, like the very different things, but it's really from the 70s. And then I have, of course, since I've lived most of my grown-up life in another place or other countries, I maybe notice better how much Norway has changed. So I think that we only had this one radio channel, that we all saw the same TV programs, and that there was this. This is a nostalgic thought, but as I have this amazing Holbeck quote that I don't think I will read it, but Holbeck in Submission, he has the main character visits his old school and he gets like nostalgic feelings, and he says it's really an ugly place, but nostalgia has nothing to do with aesthetics or whether it was good times. It's just we were there. And this, I think, is like my nostalgia here. It's not, I have no nostalgia for old films, or it's just, this was how it was when I grew up, and I have a nostalgic feeling towards it, but I don't want to romanticize it or say that, everything was great. And I think my father is one example that it was also complicated to live in the 70s or earlier. But yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if Now, maybe we open to questions from the audience, because we said we end on nostalgia.
Okay, okay.
And so if you have questions, we're happy if you raise your hand, and we kindly ask you to use a microphone, not because of the space here, but especially because of the live video transmission.
If there are no questions, I can read a quote.
Please do.
No, but I can wait for there's a question.
Okay.
I will pretend as if I don't know you, so,
Yes.
so speak to a stranger.
Thank you very much for the conversation, and well, I know your work very well. So, of course, there is a certain kind of knowledge that comes before I saw the exhibition. But I'm very interested because you mentioned all this psychiatric treatment of your father, and also like a certain choreography that belongs to both the exhibitions, but also like of memory as well. And I couldn't help but think about trauma, but also about how we are also like being taught of going through trauma by repetition because of Freudian sort of like psychiatry treatment. I don't know what I can speak to. But there is this idea that there is something in repetition that allows us to heal. And there is something there in a certain rhetoric that comes through the exhibition and through the pieces of the film, in this unsolved, in this constant unsolved, because we are never given an answer about anything, right? So certain scenes are repeated in different forms and ways, which belongs somehow also to this category of the trauma, for how Freud thought that trauma was, you know, like something that we lived as an individual that goes again and again through this memory until something is solved.
I was just admit that I never went to a shrink, or I never did that because of my father's story, I think. But I'm not really familiar. Like when you say that, I don't know. I didn't know that repetition could be a healing process. I didn't know. I'm also kind of. I think Dora could say much more about this, but I think that we took out the word trauma from the press release because I'm not really thinking of it as such. I can see that it's probably under that category to a certain extent, and I think that it was a shocking experience in many ways. But I haven't really thought that that was what I was doing, like healing my trauma. I was actually more thinking that if that might sound very positive and banal, but that by using this painful, I would call it, memory, and make it into, use it artistically, it will be meaningful to have this, it will give this painful memory another meaning. And that is, of course, an artistic kind of privilege, that it's actually your capital. It's also my capital. And that's also why I think that Fra Far is a title that also describes the thing I got from him that are also like my capital. It's my, and it's, I'm sorry to use this economic, I wish I could say something else, but it's kind of what I have to been given in life. Like I'm not a millionaire, or I didn't inherit $1 million, but which is nothing at this point, but anyway, $10 million. But this I inherited from my father. This was also how I thought of the title.
It was a wonderful exhibit. I saw it the first day. I haven't really seen much of your work since I've lived for many, many years now in U.S., in Boston. And I was thinking about memory more along the ways that we often repress our memories to protect ourselves. And we don't even know that we do it. but we actually do. So I was wondering if you sometimes got into problems with things bubbling up, things that were hidden deep down, and not just for you, but for the rest of your family. And when you sort of interacted together and sort of shared, and maybe it got really hard on you all.
Yeah, it's too fresh, I think, for me and my family to say anything about that, like definite about it. But it, like when I said that I had like a lot of wine and hours by myself, in a sense, to kind of be able to process it. That is true. But and I can say it this way also. I was afraid that it would be a burden on other members of my family, because I know that there were other times in my life where this was not something I wanted to revisit. I needed to build other stories and other narratives. I think repressed memory is not really what this was for me. It was more that to revisit something with new eyes and with this method that I now have. I think that is really more important, and I do not think I will ever heal from this. This is me, and I still don't know if this car will move from this parking lot. I know that it wasn't there. It wasn't on the parking lot. It wasn't red. I know that now, but it's still there somehow. And this is like a, yeah, I don't know. This is still in the process.
I'm a therapist, and I'm not too interested in therapy, when it comes to it. I was really touched about what you taught us about the exhibition that I've seen quite carefully. Oh, well, maybe because I don't like it. But it's, what really got to me is when I have tried to make this right, but you said that you sort of got close to your father's fixed thoughts about, his who he was and his personality and all his grief and despair that we sort of understand through his psychiatric history. But, I think what I've learned through therapy, the way I've been taught it myself, it's just exactly like you say it. You rock the story. You look at it from different angles. And sort of the aim of therapy is, as I see it, it's not to tell a story again and again and again, but it's to change the story, to move it, to rock it, and make you look at it in a different way. And that can change you.
Yeah, and I think I said in an interview that I would be interested in sharing some of my father's journals and epikriser that I got, and see what good therapist, how this would be read today with today's methods, and so, because I feel that my father was committed at the age of 20 first time, and the story he told then about, he had already himself made the story. And they never questioned that, ever, as far as I can see from they repeat, it's like he stuck with that first narrative. And this I found there was many nights with many bottles after I read that. I felt this really, that was hard. But I think it would be really interesting as maybe another project to look at that. But of course, these are, I suppose their conversation was more interesting or more, than this is just like the summary of the meetings with the psychiatrists, what they write there. But they are, I think that there's a lot of like, it seems like he can, he doesn't drink, he's paying his bills, and he's having 50 milligrams of Truxal. Like, there's a bit too much of that, I feel like, oh, well, they took really well care of him. There's difference between the different therapy and, I say it a little bit cruelly now, but it's, Anna.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for this conversation. I find that in the exhibition there are multiple representations of this father, while the representation of Evelyn, maybe I find that physically it is in the dark room in the corner with these banners, these white banners that include your conversation through these postcards with Evelyn. Maybe in the rest of the exhibition you call her out more, like there is this constant Evelyn, 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 but its representation, it's manifested by these banners that drop from above or from this sort of net. So I was wondering if you could share with us your decisions for maybe killing these multiple representations of your father, but actually touching so softly and gently upon the figure of Evelyn.
Oh. Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think in general in the exhibition or in the work with it, it's the first time I actually thought I will not kind of make the plan for every work to begin with. I will see what materializes. And the work on Evelyn, I knew there had to be an Evelyn work, a piece in the exhibition, but that was the last one to fall into place. And of course, here again, my memory, I knew her, I have memories of her, but the postcards was actually also, like for me, a little bit a shock that she wrote to us in Norwegian, in broken Norwegian, to me in particular. And then I wondered how to represent, I was kind of struggling with this, how to represent someone that you have this very faint memory of, and that you also, I remember that I felt her being gone, like this feeling that there is a void or something is irreplaceable. And then Ida Ribu showed me some amazing works by, I forgot the name now, in textile. And I thought this was a way for me to kind of combine my newly found love for working with textile. And I call them ghosts, actually, those two, because they kind of just like what is left of her in my possession, somehow. I have written a novel as part of this research project, and there will be a bit more about her but she will still be a kind of a ghost. Okay, you want my quote? Should I do the quotes?
Which one is it?
You can, okay.
No.
Yeah, okay. So during this lockdown, the first part of this, I discovered Ursula Le Guin. I don't know if anyone has heard of her. People have a very different experience with her, but this was mind-blowing for me because many of her theories on fiction and are things that I have thought about, I felt on my own, and then it turns out that she's worked with these kind of thoughts for, I don't know, 50 years or something. So it's both a relief and kind of a sorrow that I didn't know that. And then she died, of course, like 2 months after or something. I started to read her, I think, or something. No, she was actually already there. Oh, anyway. So this was, and she also, this was interesting that I find it, because she writes in the category or genre of fantasy and science fiction, which is normally not, but she has, so she really constructs stories in a very totally different manner from how I work. This is from one of her most famous novels called The Left Hand of Darkness, and I think it's in the very beginning of it. It says, "Truth is a matter of the imagination. The soundest fact may fail or prevail in the style of its telling. Like that singular organic jewel of our seas, which grows brighter as one woman wears it, worn by another dulls and goes to dust. Facts are no more solid, coherent, round, and real than pearls are. Both are very sensitive."
Then I think we close the afternoon here and wish you all good rest of the afternoon. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming.